Hello.
Hey.
This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two Girls, One Ghost. And these two girls are shivering.
Yeah, it's a chilly, rainy day on the East Coast, and we're both in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
You're home in New Jersey. I am at my home in Massachusetts, and it's fucking cold out. So it's cold in, too.
When I'm at my mom's, I always say I'm home in New Jersey, but she literally lives in Pennsylvania.
But she's not that far over the border.
No, she's literally a stone's throw, a George Washington crossing the rivers throw across the border. Because Pennsylvania has never been home to me, I just always say New Jersey.
Well, and it's like you see your family who lives in New Jersey. Like you see your brother and sister when you go home. So it does feel that way.
Yes. But we are your ghostesses. That's Corinne. I'm
Hello.
Sabrina. And this is an encounters episode. And if you too are shivering, well, we'll make you shiver for something more, something a little bit spookier. We're going to make you want to get in a warm bath and hide under your covers and never go out into the world again. Or actually maybe be so scared of your house that you burn it down to the ground.
Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. And if your house does burn to the ground, no one is hurt, no one's inside, and it was no one's fault. So you get that insurance claim.
You put a spin on it. I was saying that you're so scared of your house that you burn it down yourself, not that someone or something is burning it down.
Yeah.
But yes, if it does burn down, knock on wood, it does not. Actually,
Hopefully
you know
not.
what? Before I continue saying dark things, I would like to acknowledge and pat myself on the back that while one of the stories in this episode maybe is a little bit spooky, I did pick a heartwarming one to end us on, which...
Okay, to end. We'll work our way into this lighter story. You've gone against what you normally do for yourself.
Well, I did both.
You're just dabbling in the light.
I'm showing the duality of humanity, of my humanity today. My intention behind the last story that I am going to end on was not to find a heartwarming story. But when I read it, I was like, okay, this is nice. I'll read it. I was looking for darkness, though, when I found the light.
On your search into the dark, you found some light.
That's beautiful.
Okay, this is sent in from a listener. I have two incredible ghost encounters that happened directly to me, and I swear on my life, more on that later, that it did happen. I have told many people these stories, and I want to share them with you while I can, mostly as a gift to my wife, Katrina, Kate. I really enjoy your podcast, but Kate, now she's a super fan. She quickly blew through all of your episodes. She is a Patreon member. She loves you too. So if you bring my experiences to your show, you can bet she will hear them. And that's really my main motivation for sharing, because I have terminal cancer.
Oh.
And I could be the third ghost story you get out of this. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Well, thank you for letting us be your ghostly journal.
And you're more than welcome to come visit us in ghostly form.
Yes. Okay. First experience. Tombstone. Yes, that Tombstone, the old cowboy town in Southeast Arizona. Amazing movie with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. So we visited during Halloween season because they have a yearly festival called Doc Holidays. Get it? Val Kilmer's best role. Where the town has this big festival and they bring in a bunch of tourists with it. We did 3 different ghost tours, and this town had a lot of death in its day. The first 2 tours focused on the town, OK Corral, Boot Hill Graveyard, and we saved the best for last, the infamous Birdcage Theater. It's featured prominently in the movie, where all of the cowboys would go and drink, watch acts on the stage, gamble downstairs, and entertain themselves with the ladies in the private rooms. Sadly, a lot of these poor women were victims of the worst of those cowboys. Anyhow, I really suggest that you look up the Birdcage Theater. Tombstone had a huge fire back in the 1880s that wiped out the entire town except for the Birdcage Theater.
Oh.
It survived, and I think the main reason why? Well, all the ghosts in the building saved it so that they could save it as their refuge. It was always considered haunted. In fact, it got so bad that the last owners just left it, locked the doors, got out of town, and it was left empty for decades. And when someone came back in, there were still bottles on the tables, like nothing had been touched. Even the 100-year-old posters showcasing the interesting shows that they had at the time, those were still up. It's an amazing tour for anyone going to Tombstone. It was gorgeous back in its day, and you can still see all of the bullet holes from the rowdy cowboys who would shoot into the ceiling when the shows got really good.
I can't even imagine living during that lifetime. Like,
I would never want to.
No.
It's too scary. There's too many hooligans with guns.
Hooligans.
You get to see the entire building, including the creepy basement, but the tour ends in the backstage of the theater. The creepiest thing back there is the original Tombstone hearse. It's an old Gothic-style wagon that is all black with a big glass enclosure for the people rich enough to have their coffin transported in it. The tour ends with a seance in this scary locale full of ghosts.
Wait, this is so cool.
It's so cool. The tour guide told us that most of the ghosts are the showgirls that did not survive their time in Tombstone.
Yeah,
They all went through the same horrible things, which is why they all stuck together. And like I mentioned, most likely they're the ones that saved the theater from the town fire. I should mention we were also the very last tour. So by the time we did this seance, it was well after midnight. Not quite the witching hour, but you could really feel it all. Essences, feelings, that tingling on your back and on your neck. So feeling completely satisfied with our day of ghost tours, we went back to our small hotel, which was a very old home in the Old West style. So old that our room had 2 single beds. No tomfoolery in these beds, you whippersnappers. So we get to bed, and here's when it gets good. I'm laying on my side facing away from Kate's bed when I feel her sit down on the end of my bed by my feet. I felt the bed compress under my calves as she obviously was feeling a little frisky and came and sat down on the end of my bed. So I coyly smiled and I slowly rolled over to say hello when I saw that Kate was actually still sleeping in the bed across from me, fast asleep. My eyes got very large. That pressure on the end of the bed, yeah, it was still there. If anything, it was more pronounced when I turned over. So I did what anyone would do, and I slowly turned onto my stomach and wondered what the hell I should do. Do I yell? Do I wake up Kate? Well, I didn't want to disturb my spirit, but it did have different ideas. I felt the pressure crawling up my leg exactly like a finger running up my leg. When it reached my tush, and then they write, it's extremely cute, per my wife. When they reached my cute tush, I got a very distinct pinch. I bit my lip, but nothing else happened. I had to guess it must have been one of those old showgirls from the theater that took a shine to me, appreciated my fine derriere. Not that I could blame her. I told Kate first thing in the morning, and she was quite upset that she didn't get an encounter, but happy nonetheless. But the whole experience just has to be one of the better ghostly experiences.
Yeah.
Second story. This one's titled Love You, Mom. This one's shorter, but it's even sweeter. And Kate was in the car when it happened. My mom died very suddenly at the age of 49. I may have been one of the last people to talk to her that day before it happened. I called her to get a recipe of strawberry frosting. My mom was an amazing chef. Her Christmas cookies, they were legendary.
Oh.
She sounded quite sick and really stuffed up, but she did give me the recipe and I thanked her. I told her to go get some rest, and honestly, I hope I said love you, Mom, before I hung up, but I can't really be positive. I never dreamed it would be the last time that I would talk to her. My dad found her the next morning. She'd passed in the night. No one knew how sick she was, and she had an absolute fear of going to the doctor. When it came to her kids, though, if we had a sniffle, we were bundled off and sent to the doctor's office immediately. But for her, she would only call and ask to get medications over the phone. A tragic death that could have been avoided so easily. And that is what haunted me.
That's so
sad. That is until her funeral. We had the service at the church and then the burial at the cemetery. We got back to our car and I was naturally feeling how people feel when they're at their mother's funeral, and so Kate was driving. Then my cell phone rang, and I should point out that this was 20 years ago, and I had the old, dependable, unbreakable Nokia phone.
Yeah.
For the listeners not old enough to know Nokia phones, they were simple phones with almost no features other than being crazy strong, unbreakable, and dependable. Didn't we call them bricks? I feel like we were always like the Nokia brick or something like that.
And they had Snake.
Oh, they did. So fun.
That was fun.
You could run one over and still make a call. No joke. Anyhow, I had never had any issues with this phone, but here at the cemetery, it started ringing at full volume, vibrating at full strength. The old pixelated screen was going nuts, and none of the buttons would respond. I stared at Kate, and she just said, I see it too, also wide-eyed. I worked at a cell phone booth, so I knew to override it, I would have to just hold down the power for 5 seconds, and then it would reboot. So I tried that, but nope, didn't work. None of the buttons did. And then the speaker turned on, and it wasn't the static that you might normally hear with a bad connection. It was static-like, but kept fading in and out. And then we heard a woman's voice. Tracy? Tracy. It was faint, but we both heard it. Tracy? Well, that's my oldest sister. She and my mom were often on the outs with each other, usually because Tracy was, well, let's just say, headstrong about her opinions.
Oh.
She got much better later in life. I do love my sisters. The phone had been buzzing for about a minute straight, and we were panicking a bit, so I took the phone apart. I removed the battery. Looking back, I just want to slap myself. I should have kept it open as long as possible, but seeing and hearing it happen, Kate and I were both definitely in shock. Oh, right. And I should mention that Tracy had the same exact experience on her phone at the same time. We didn't know until a week later when we brought it up and Tracy's eyes shot open and said, "That happened to you too?" But she was alone when it happened and almost thought that she had just hallucinated the experience. We both know now that it was my mom reaching out, always trying to mend fences with Tracy. So there you have it. Ghosts are real. There is 100% something after death. I'm not a religious person and I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I know that there's more for our souls after we leave our bodies. I absolutely know it. Here's a bit more. I have terminal brain cancer and I've been defying the odds for 2 years now, but my last MRI let me know that I don't have much time left and likely won't be around if this gets on the podcast. That's okay. I've had a wonderful life with zero regrets and I married the most incredible woman in the world, Katrina. She saved my life when we found my first tumor. If she had done absolutely anything different, I would not be here to write this. That's a wonderful story in itself that I won't go into, but near-death experiences are so real. Wow. The night of my brain surgery, I fell asleep in my room and I had the most beautiful and vivid dream of my life. I was in a beautiful field with a perfect sky and lots of cool trees, and I just felt great and at peace. And then my bed alarm woke me up. The nurse ran in and asked if I was okay, and I said, yep. I had no idea that I had just had brain surgery. I said, I'm really tired, and then I went back to sleep. And bam, field, sky, peace, same dream. Bam, alarm wakes me up again. Nurse runs in, asks if I'm okay. I say, yep, I go back to sleep. And this happens 5 times total, rinse and repeat. And the last time I finally got annoyed enough to ask the nurse what the alarm was that kept waking me up, and it was the heart monitor screaming that my heart was actually at critical levels. The crash cart was just outside of the room. Later, they told me that I was the sweetest near-death patient because I kept apologizing for them having to run in because of the alarm. Oh, and you can add this part to the podcast too. I know I won't be around, but if there's a way for me to reach out to Kate after this body is used up, I'm going to make every effort. So perhaps you'll get another amazing story. Make sure Kate gets full credit for that. Either way, I just have chills. Either way, I know if I share my experiences, Kate will definitely be listening, and it would count as me reaching out from the beyond, not to mention having our story featured on her favorite podcast. Oh. My only regret is leaving the most beautiful woman in the world. She was my entire world, but I'm not afraid to see what's waiting in the next one, and I'll be waiting for her when she arrives. Anywho, I'm off to give all my friends a big hug while I can. Cheers, Dan. Oh my God. Whew. I was very focused on getting through the whole thing without crying, but my God.
Dan
is for sure still with us. This was like last week that Dan emailed us.
I know, I saw that. But yeah. I mean, the love that Dan has for his wife, Kate, would make anyone cry. It's so beautiful and so special. But I do love that Dan has had all these other experiences in his life that, similar to us, like we have complete faith and belief that there is something more that comes after this life. But I like that there are these experiences Dan has that also reaffirms that for him.
And Dan now gets to share the experience of watching Kate listen to his stories on our podcast together.
Right.
And then, Dan, we hope it's very far in the future that you get to be in ghost form. But when you are, Kate will without a doubt know that it is a sign.
Yeah. And you're welcome to haunt our podcast, to communicate with Kate. You're welcome to do whatever haunting is necessary. I don't know what it's like. I don't know how much control you have, but I give full permission.
Oh, and I love that they're such a ghost-loving duo, too. Like, they go to haunted places. They go on all of these tours together. It's so cool.
Dan was full on like grazed by a ghost and butt pinched. And Kate's first response was, I'm jealous. I wanted something like that to happen.
Yeah. Why didn't I get any experiences? Well, here's the thing. This podcast is permanent. It's online. And so now Dan's stories live forever. And now we can forever remember that Dan's butt is so cute that even the ghost will follow him to give it a pinch.
That is like the nicest compliment ever. My butt's so cute that ghosts pinch it wherever I go.
Your booty cheeks bring all the ghosts to the yard.
Okay, well, I'm going to pivot real quick and go scary.
We're bookending with some more emotional and heartfelt ones.
This is from our listener, Miriam, and it is called, I Got Possessed by a Demon. Hi, ghostesses. My name is Miriam, and I have been looking for a spooky podcast like yours for several years now, and just a couple of weeks ago, my ears were blessed by Two Girls, One Ghost. I've been listening pretty much nonstop at work, and now I easily get startled by people walking past me while I'm in my own little spooky world. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal, and it's something that runs on my dad's side of the family. We have a family curse related to it, but that's a story for another time. I have countless crazy stories about ghosts, demons, premonition dreams, visits from loved ones, and so much more. But today, I wanted to share with you what I believe is to be a very unique and very terrifying experience I had back in 2020. It's a long one. It sounds dramatic, but I promise it all happened to me. So buckle up as I tell you about the time that I got possessed by a demon.
Oh my gosh. Sabrina's favorite types of stories.
Yes. I know I'm not alone. I know you've seen those movies and those creepy videos and audio clips uploaded all over the internet where someone gets possessed by a demon. It starts slow, fits of rage, and then they stop eating or sleeping. Eventually, it escalates into convulsions, speaking in tongues, levitating, and poltergeist-like activities. Well, I've seen my fair share of footage like this, and being someone with a fascination for the paranormal, it makes sense. And although my entire life I've had a strong belief in this stuff, I really didn't find possessions believable. I always felt I had a good understanding of how the spirit world and negative entities functioned, and I just didn't think this was something that was possible. I've come into contact with what I believe to be full-on demonic entities in the past, and as long as I believe they couldn't truly cause any physical harm, they never did.
I feel like that's a lot of run-ins with darker energies already.
It's not a casual statement for most people to say I've encountered demons.
And many over various periods of time.
But whenever I did see stuff like this on TV or the internet, I always wondered, if it is possible, what would it feel like to be possessed? What were these people feeling? What were they seeing? What were they hearing while their bodies were supposedly taken over by a demon? Well, you guys, when I was 19 years old, I was unfortunate enough to finally find out. I want to get to the juicy stuff, so I'm going to keep the backstory as short as I can. My dad is the youngest of 10 kids. They all see ghosts. His mom saw ghosts. Some of them seem to be clairvoyant, and I'm quite sure I've got a couple of aunts that are witches, but they would never admit to something like that.
So cool, though. Have all of those family members.
I have 2 older brothers and 2 younger brothers, and we all have had countless paranormal experiences for as long as I can remember. Imaginary friends that weren't so friendly, doors opening and closing, stuff moving around, shadow figures. The list could probably go on forever. Out of me and my siblings, I'm the one that seems to be more in tune with this stuff. I wouldn't call myself a psychic or a medium. Maybe just the veil is thinner for me, but I could communicate with him. I could sense light and dark. And I have dreams that were just too specific to be coincidences. As I got older, I became obsessed with learning more about the paranormal and how to control my abilities. I watched videos about ghost sightings, possessions, and the like. I watched a lot of scary movies about ghosts, and I pretty much talked about it consistently. My mom always told me she thought that my sensitivity to it was a gift, like maybe it was something I could use to help banish the negativity from other people's lives or help people find comfort when their loved ones passed. My family is heavily religious, and it's really taboo to be messing with this stuff. They strongly believe in good and evil, and I guess I didn't realize just how dangerous it was to be obsessing over this stuff until it was way too late. My dad is so scared of the paranormal that he'll tell anyone who asks that he doesn't believe in ghosts, but I know he believes.
Yeah, everyone does a little bit.
Even if you are like, I don't really understand, and I think there's something more, that means you kind of have the opening to believe, and we see you.
We know you.
I'm watching you. Long story, kind of short, it consumed my life. Because I was so obsessed with ghosts, they did kind of become attracted to me. I was never alone, so for months I constantly saw shadow people, even during the day. I saw shadows following people around everywhere I went. Doors would slam, stuff would move around, and I stopped looking in mirrors because I knew that any time I did, I would see something terrifying. Unfortunately, it did make me grow extremely depressed and angry. I got enraged anytime anyone in my family would bring up religious topics. There were shadows around me all the time, and I started to feel trapped and hopeless. Trigger warning, I did start to consider to take my own life to escape all the pain, and it seemed to be coming from nowhere. I had what I call ghost-induced nightmares, where I would have these awful dreams about ghosts or demons trying to take my life or hurt people I love. Then I would wake up with sleep paralysis and find that same entity from my dream standing in my room staring at me. I lost control of what my mom had said was a gift, and it was now taking over me. I had gotten pretty good at waking up, seeing a figure standing in my room, telling it to go away, calming myself down enough to go back to sleep. And they would always go away. But I knew that if one night I was too scared to speak up and tell them to leave, that something bad would happen, and they were waiting for that night to come. One night, one of them got what it wanted. I was too scared to tell it to go away. I was having a nightmare, and in this nightmare, I was in an empty room with cobblestone walls and dirt floor. A single flickering light bulb hung from a wooden ceiling that looked like the bottom of floorboards. It was like I was in a basement. It was cold. I could see my own breath in the dim light. There were no windows and no doors, no way in, no way out. And I could hear someone walking around very slowly on the floor above me. There were blood stains and frantic scratch marks all over the walls, as if I was not the first person to be hopelessly, helplessly trapped in this room.
Ooh, this is giving Back Rooms vibes.
Kind of like Barbarian too.
Yeah.
I just stood in the middle of the room, shaking from fear, staring at the scratch marks. I remember thinking, he's going to get me. He's coming. I know he's coming to get me. I can't stop it. Then I heard a deep, scratchy male voice rattle around my head, almost as if it were thoughts that were not my own. He laughed in a slow, menacing way and said in my mind, I'm here for you. You are mine, and I won't ever let you leave from this hell.
Well, that's not encouraging.
I screamed, and it woke me up from the nightmare. But there, standing in the corner of my bedroom, was a man, so dark he seemed to suck in all of the light around him, and I couldn't see any distinct features. He was so tall that he was bent forward with his head leaned up against the ceiling. His arms were so long that his wrists dragged on the floor behind him. I knew immediately this was the same thing that had spoken to me in my nightmare. I wasn't paralyzed, but I was too scared to speak, to tell him to go away, and that only light and love are welcome in my home. So I just stared, a single tear rolling down my cheek. I blinked, and suddenly, he wasn't standing in there anymore, but I could still feel him in the room. It wasn't cold in the room, but my body started to shake. I suddenly felt violently nauseous. I felt as if I had cold mud in my lungs and in my head and in my entire body. There was a disgusting feeling as if there was something inside of me making me sick. I was shaking so hard that it must have looked like I was having a seizure, but I was fully conscious. I don't remember what exactly I was thinking, just that I was frantic, fighting for control. I thought in my head, I have to stop him. I have to stop him. I have to get him out of my body. I tried to stand. I tried to turn on the lights, but my legs shook so hard that I hit my knees on my nightstand and buckled to the floor. It should have hurt, but it didn't. I clenched my teeth to stop them from chattering and balled my hands into fists, trying to make my arms stop shaking. I wasn't lightheaded. I felt heavy and full of mud and angry. I heard that same voice in my head, the one that I had heard in my dream, but this time he was just laughing, cackling with a glee that made me so angry. It wasn't loud or anything, and I couldn't actually hear it in my ears. It felt a lot more like it was my own thoughts in my head, but I knew they were not mine. The only way I can think to describe this is, you know how back in the day in driver's ed, the student would be driving, but the instructor in their passenger seat also had brakes and a steering wheel on their side of the car so they could take control if anything went wrong. That's how it felt, but like inside my body. I'm not sure who the driver and who the instructor was. That was what was so scary. Oh, that's scary. It's like almost like you don't even know that you have control anymore.
It's reminding me so much of season 2 of Stranger Things, where Billy is like battling the creature that's like oozing inside of him and taking apart everyone else in these really gross, like blobby explosion situations.
Yeah. I forced myself to stand, slowly making my way to the light switch. I felt this impulse to start smashing things around my room. I wanted to break all of the trinkets I had spent years collecting. I wanted to rip the drawers out of my dresser and tear my bedroom door off its hinges. My right hand actually stopped shaking and reached out to a heavy glass vase that I had sitting on my dresser, and I was about to pick it up and chuck it across the room. But as soon as I started resisting, my hand started shaking again. Finally, I reached the light switch and flipped it on, hoping that the light flooding the room would offer me some relief from all this pressure that I was feeling in my body. But the light just flickered a few times before turning all the way on, and I still felt the same. I stood in the room, shaking, clenching my jaw, holding my hands in fists. I was terrified and angry at the same time, and I felt that laugh bubbling up in my throat, and it wasn't my own. So I kept saying in my head, I have to stop him. I have to get help. I need help. Tears welled up in my eyes. I felt like I was going to vomit as I reached for the doorknob and crept down the hallway to my parents' room. I didn't know what I was going to say or do. I just knew I needed help. I knocked lightly, well, as lightly as I could with my hands shaking so badly. I like that there's still a politeness, like, sorry to wake you.
Yeah, I would be busting the door down.
I tried to make enough noise to wake up my parents without startling them. Mom, I whispered. She gasped, sat straight up, sensing that was something wrong. She turned on her bedside lamp. With worry or maybe with fear, she asked me, what's wrong, sweetheart? And then, why are you smiling like that? I hadn't known I was smiling. My dad sat up too. Both of them were looking at me with concern. I was still shaking with my hands in my fists. I didn't exactly want to tell them, hey, so I think there's a demon inside my body and I need an exorcism. So I just said, there's something bad in my room, something really, really bad, and I can't get it to go away. They both knew that I was talking about ghosts. Even though I was 19 at the time, I would still find myself crawling into their bed in the middle of the night, describing nightmares I had or things that I saw looming over me in the bedroom. So they both climbed out of bed. I led them back to my room. They looked around and, like usual, they didn't see anything. But instead of telling me to calm down and go back to sleep like they usually would, they decided this was serious and they needed to say a prayer over me. I sat on my bed, trying not to have full-blown convulsions, and they both stood around me, started praying. Truly, as soon as they started saying the prayer, I started gagging like I was going to throw up, like projectile vomit throw up.
Oh my gosh. Ew.
I couldn't really focus on anything either of them were saying. I was just trying to stop shaking and avoid puking all over. But every time my mom said the word God, I wanted to reach up and choke her. This went on for a really long time. And it wasn't crazy exorcism stuff like, get thee hence, devil, or the power of Christ compels you. It was more of just praying for protection and forgiveness and peace. Regular religious people prayers, I guess. Finally, I felt enough bravery and clarity in my head. So I was thinking in my head over and over, go away, go away, go away, go away. Finally, I felt the weight leave my body. That muddy feeling melted away. The shaking stopped, and I truly collapsed into a pile of tears. All I could do was weep from the relief of being released from that evil thing's grasp. My mom sat on the bed next to me and hugged me, rubbing my back. She said something about how I was freezing cold. She waited until I stopped crying enough to speak and asked me what it was that was bothering me and if it had left. I weakly nodded yes, but as I looked up to her, I saw that my bedroom door had been left open, and in that hallway behind her, there it was, that tall figure, his head bent against the ceiling, leaning around the corner. And I couldn't really see it, but I could feel that he was smiling evilly at me.
Good Lord.
The last thing he said before he disappeared was, I'll always come back for you. And then he was gone with that horrible laugh. Eventually, my parents decided I had calmed down enough to be left alone and went back to bed. Needless to say, I did not get any sleep for the rest of the night, or really for the next few weeks after that. We never told my brothers about it, and neither me nor my parents ever brought it up to each other again. I hope you read this because I've been dying for someone to hear it, and it really happened to me. I no longer believe that I got possessed. I mean, I was going through a very traumatic period of my life at that point, and it made it easy for me to believe pretty much everything. I had recently gone through a breakup from a very abusive relationship with the first person I ever loved. I had 2 knee surgeries and was experiencing a lot of religious existentialism because I had recently left the Mormon church. It didn't help that I hardly ever got any sleep and had delusions about ghosts and demons that was very supported by my very Mormon mom. Lately, I'm not even sure I believe in ghosts or demons anymore. I've always kind of been shaky when I first wake up. Maybe I was just traumatized and kind of having a crazy experience from everything else I was going through. I don't know. But all I know is I no longer dabble in the paranormal. I'm the furthest from being a religious person, and I never see weird things anymore. But I'm happier that way. Who knows? They all say the devil's best trick is making people believe he doesn't exist at all. Stay spooky, ladies. I'll see you on the other side. Miriam.
Okay, Miriam. I feel like Miriam's not giving themselves enough credit because oftentimes I think when we hear possession stories, we are hearing it from the person who wasn't possessed, just someone who was witnessing it. But the fact that Miriam could feel and experience the things, like I wanted to choke my mom, I recognizes all of these feelings that aren't theirs and fights against it and is able to come and ask for help.
Yeah.
I think there's so much strength to Miriam, where it was like
Absolutely.
the majority of the battle was Miriam versus this dark entity that was trying so hard to do whatever they could to possess her.
Have you seen the new season of Goosebumps? Or not new season, I guess the new iteration of Goosebumps? You watched it, right?
Oh, yeah.
We watched it on tour, right? I think you ended up like surpassing me finishing it before I did.
Probably.
It's kind of like, what's his name? What's that actor's name? He's also in Barbarian. The teacher.
Justin Long.
When Justin Long is like battling with the entity and has like no control over his hand and is like the left hand versus the right hand and like the paper.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that, where Miriam was fighting so hard. I hate this idea of like, because we've always wondered like, where does the person and their soul go if they are possessed? I hate this idea that there's this room that has no entrance, no exit, the cement and wood planks and scratch marks and blood stains from when previous people have been in there.
They're trapped in there.
It's such an unsettling
I
thing.
hate that idea. That kind of feels like Insidious too, where it's like your astral body is or the Upside Down from Stranger Things. Like there's so many different versions of that exist where like you are just trapped somewhere.
Miriam, I'm really glad that you were able to fight it. And it's hard because it's like, from our perspective and the way that the story is presented until the end of Miriam's email, it very much does feel like a possession. And we've read so many or heard so many stories of entities like this taking advantage of people who are going through some of the hardest times of their lives. So maybe it was a culmination of all this trauma and like the dark stuff that Miriam was experiencing. And if Miriam does not want to believe it's a possession, then who are we to say what it is or isn't? Like, we don't know anything. I would understand if it was a possession, why Miriam was targeted, because they were going through such a hard time.
And I do think that there is a benefit to choosing not to believe, because then you're not giving it energy. So there's not much power for it to feed off of. Don't feed the beasts.
No. And I think it's smart that Miriam has kind of closed that door.
Yeah, I agree.
It is also interesting to me because in the beginning, Miriam said that like her dad's family, like everyone has experienced ghosts and has like some type of ability, and that even her siblings have all experienced things. And then
but her dad doesn't want to believe.
Yeah. And it's like taboo to talk about it. But clearly everyone in your family has some type of paranormal inclination.
It is easier to just ignore things at times.
Agreed.
And the rain is pounding down on my sunroom now. Wonder if you'll be able to hear it. The like.
When I was reading Miriam's story too, it started raining playing harder over here too.
Look at the East Coast here. We're getting pummeled.
Spooky.
I like it. All right. Well, we're going to stay spooky because this email is titled Life-Size Barbie. So,
okay.
What up, my fellow ghostesses? I'm Mary from a small town in Utah, about 35 minutes from Flush Pedestrian Ranch. Anyway, I wanted to write in today with an encounter that I didn't have, but my sister did. Yes, I was one of those kids that got a life-size Barbie for Christmas. My sister, Kara, she hated it. She was always so creeped out by this Barbie. The Barbie was so big that it wouldn't fit in anything, and it was either always on the toy box or it was sitting on the wall next to the toy box. It was always sitting in these weird angles, off-balanced with some crazy hair and no clothes. No, I don't blame her for thinking it was creepy. I don't know why I didn't dress the damn thing. LOL. Anyways, Kara hated my Barbie with a passion. She always felt like she was being watched. And one time, she was reluctantly cleaning the room, and the Barbie was sitting against the wall in the same place for days, even weeks at this point. No one had touched her. Kara was standing in the middle of the room playing with random stuff that she found while she was cleaning. Out of nowhere, at almost the same time, the Barbie toppled over and the door made a sudden noise as if it were being pushed open.
What?
Kara was nowhere near the door and had the door shut because our mom was in the computer room right across the hall, and she was upset at her for making Kara clean. I don't know where I was or why I wasn't cleaning, but thank God.
Yeah, seriously.
The door popped open with so much force that it was swaying back and forth. Kara immediately stopped being mad at my mom and told her that she was too scared to finish. She thought my mom was going to think that she was being over dramatic. After Kara told our mom what happened, though, she was so nice and understanding. She knew mom believed that she had a reason to be afraid of that stupid doll, but the worst part is soon after. So a little backstory, for some reason, we would shower in my mom's bathroom, which was already creepy as hell, but the shower had this annoying glass door that you would have to lift to open and then lift again to close it all the way. Anyway, Kara was showering in there that same day, or maybe it was the day after. I don't know. It's been a long time. But she was a little freaked out from the whole incident, and she remembers thinking specifically about the Barbie and the door opening. And right after that thought, the shower door just opens all by itself, just like the bedroom door had. And she knows that she closed the door all the way. She blames the Barbie, and she got the hell out of the shower as fast as she could.
Yeah.
Another story from me personally about my mom's bathroom. My sister and I were bickering all day like sisters do. And my mom had enough of it. She told me to go shower, go get ready for bed. I always tried to be fast in the shower because I hated my mom's bathroom. Anyway, I was showering, minding my own business, when I heard a deep, scary demon voice, like what Sabrina does, say, "Mary. Mary." I started yelling at my sister because I assumed that it was her, but nothing, not even a giggle. I finished showering as fast as I could, got dressed, and went to go hunt down my sister. She was in the kitchen with my mom, and I asked her, "Why did you do that?" And she replied, "I didn't do anything." I didn't believe her, so I looked at my mom and I asked, "Did she go into the bathroom while I was showering?" My mom says, "No, she's been with me the whole time." My little 8-year-old self was terrified.
Yeah.
That being said, my childhood home was a little haunted at most. There are more stories, like the man in the computer room that my mom would mistake as my dad, or the little girl that I always saw in the corner of my eye while walking from one side of the house to the other. And also the time that I found a little boy scared in my room.
What?
Those are all stories for me to write a different day. I love you ladies so much. Thank you for being the best haunted podcast. Love the community you guys started. It's amazing. See you on the other side. Mary. Mary.
But Mary, was this little boy a ghost or a real little boy that you found scared in your room?
Sounds like a scared little ghost boy. Who is he scared of?
Well, clearly there's a lot to be scared of in this house.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like, okay, life-size Barbies are creepy, like inherently, like unfortunately. It's the same with Furbies. Dolls, Furbies,
Yes.
life-size dolls just give off creepy vibes. I feel like whatever entities in the house maybe perhaps utilized that to its advantage, because it sounds like it's connected to whatever's haunting the bathroom, which the doll wasn't in the bathroom, you know?
No. Oh, I hate it.
I hate that it can read your thoughts too. Like the Mary's sister thought about the doll and how the doll opened the door, and immediately the shower door was opened.
Yeah. I was about to say, I guess it's better than looking back and the doll has moved positions, or it's like, cross-legged, or its head is like tilted and staring at you. But then also just the ability that like whatever is attached to that doll is able to move silently and unseen through the house too.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Like into the bathroom and speak.
Mary. 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 Mary.
Mary, make that your ringtone.
Mary, answer your phone. Somebody's calling you. I'm coming for you.
Anyway, Mary, how did you continue shower? I know you were 8, but like after hearing your name, the fact that you finished showering is bravery at its finest.
Although I guess Mary thought it was her sister. Was it fear or was it just anger and annoyance at that point where you're like, when I get out of this shower, I'm gonna tell Mom.
You're gonna get in trouble.
All right, well, let's lighten the mood.
So, like I said, the intention in searching for this story was to find Ouija board stories. So the intention was for scary, but I ended up finding one that says Ouija boards aren't always horrifying.
Oh, okay.
And this is from our listener, Ashlyn. Hello, lovely ladies. I've been listening for a little over a year after seeing an ad for Campfire Stories on Spotify when I was, I still am, a broke college student. I am a spooky gal with lots of spooky experiences, so you all have become my favorite podcast to listen to while studying, working, or commuting.
Thanks.
I started from the very beginning in 2022, and I just finished up on episode 216, the Ouija board breakout. Today, I started to set up my workstation. I was finishing up some reclaimed cemetery wood Ouija boards.
Whoa. How do you even source that?
I'm just going to give a shout out to Ashlyn. They have a company called the Optimistic Oracle, and Ashlyn's tagged us in some of the work that they are working on, and it's beautiful.
I need to know way more about this job.
I think this is like Ashlyn's side hustle, likes to restore and turn old wood into Ouija boards.
So cool.
I went to play y'all's next episode, and when I saw it was about Ouija boards, I got chills down my spine, and I thought maybe it's not the best idea. But I shrugged my shoulders and decided, you know what? It's fate. Nothing spooky happened, and I'm pretty bummed about it. However, you guys interacted with my Instagram story, and it has inspired me to finally share one of my many stories. I have plenty more definitive, scary, or intriguing stories than the one I'm about to share with you, but this is by far one of the most heartwarming ones. My grandfather passed away back in 2014, but he never really left my family's side. Unfortunately, I did not get to say goodbye to him as I was at summer camp for performing arts across the country without cell service. At the end of the session, our families would come and we would do a concert for them. And at this point, I didn't know that he had passed, nor did I expect him to be there because he was in a wheelchair and he couldn't get around very well. So I'm sitting amongst the band playing my little saxophone, and I find my parents in the crowd. And I see my grandpa sitting next to them. I felt butterflies in my stomach, and I was beyond excited that he was there with them. I played my heart out, and I went running to find my family as soon as I could. I found my parents, but my grandpa wasn't with them. So I asked where he was, and my mom started tearing up and told me that he wasn't there as he had unexpectedly passed days prior.
Oh, no.
But to this day, I know he was there. He had never gotten to see me perform, and it was one of his biggest regrets in life. But now in death, he was able to be there for both of us. Anyway, I apologize because that's not really the story I was trying to tell, but I got sidetracked. So now you have two stories. Fast forward, this is 2 or 3 years later. It was my grandpa's birthday, so my uncle came over to celebrate. We made my grandpa's favorite dinner. We played his favorite music. And at the end of the night, my mom asked me to pull out my glow-in-the-dark Toys R Us Ouija board.
Classic.
My uncle, my mom, and myself put on some Frank Sinatra, turned off most of the lights, and sat around the board. We asked my grandpa to come through for several minutes and had no luck. After about 5 to 10 minutes, the song naturally switched, and as it did, all of us felt this little buzz in our hands through the planchette. I went up to look at my mom and uncle to see if they were reacting to this feeling, and I noticed that they were both staring into the living room, eyes wide. I slowly followed their gaze, locked eyes with a large green and blue orb. This orb was steady for about 30 seconds and then started to float towards us.
That's so scary.
My uncle stood up and goes, "Dad, is that you?" The orb stopped right in front of him before it morphed into a pink and purple heart. As quickly as it happened, it then just broke apart into particles and disappeared. My uncle sat back down, and the three of us were silent for a few moments, trying to absorb what just happened. We discussed what the three of us saw, and we all saw the exact same thing. They too felt the vibrating in the planchette, and my uncle was the first to see the orb and claimed that it had floated right through the front door as his all-time favorite Sinatra song came on. So yeah, Ouija boards aren't always super duper terrifying. I might not have been able to converse with him via the board, but it definitely helped bring us all together. Thanks for everything you do. I have many other stories ranging from seeing and identifying victims of fatal car accidents to having memories of a past life that I shared with my twin that in this life I absorbed in womb. But I'll leave you two with this one. Until next time, Ashlyn.
Wow, Ashlyn. It is heartwarming. It's like scary, but heartwarming at the same time because it's scary to have, like, for example, an orb coming at you, but then
But
heartwarming.
they were asking for communication, right? So like,
right.
It is unsettling, but it would be way more unsettling had they not been actively all together trying to communicate with someone.
That's true. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, it's beautiful. How many times have
is.
or anyone in the world asked for communication with someone that they've lost or a loved one, and nothing happens, you know? So for all three of them to be together on her grandfather's birthday and actually be able to have this encounter with him, I think is so beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And to know that he was there to watch you perform in the play, just all of this, it really is so special. Although I think I would still be freaked out to see the orb actually. Like, it's one thing to be like, show us a sign and the orb appears, but it's another thing for the orb to like start creeping up into the circle. And you're like, wow, okay, well.
And turn into a heart. Like, I mean,
yeah.
That's
wild.
wild.
Oh my gosh. It's like a firework, you know, when the firework goes and then all of a sudden it becomes something else and everyone's like, whoa.
And then it just like dissipates into particles.
Yeah. You're left with the lasting memory and all the joy in your heart from that experience.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I feel like this episode really took us for a ride.
It did. Our emotions all over the place.
I don't know if I have emotions anymore.
It's okay. We're tired. We're drained. Well, if you all have any paranormal stories to share with us, please email them to twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review wherever you listen to the podcast and tell some people, tell some coworkers, tell the person at the checkout line, behind you at the grocery store. Tell everybody about the podcast.
Write it on your windows.
Yeah.
On the front of your house so that people driving by are like, what is happening here? But they have to look it up.
Please, because who doesn't love a good ghost story? We sure do. The more
Yeah.
people listen, the more people email us their ghost stories.
And if you want even more ghost stories from us, and if you want to listen to all of our episodes 1 week early and ad-free, you can join us on Patreon, where you will get every month a full-length extra bonus episode. You will also get access to Campfire Stories live every Tuesday night. And you can also, if you can't join us live, you can rewatch them, play them back at any time. We have quarterly book clubs and so much more. So please join us over there.
Thank you, Jamie Ryan, for editing and producing our podcast. We so appreciate it. And thank you to all of you. We do hope that we can see you on this side, but if we do not, we will see you on the other side.